say thank all of y'all for bearing through this, because I know that it is out of our box, out of everybody's box, and I understand that and I know that. 6 months ago, I was preaching and I said this, Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. And so when I said that, and boom, it just hit me, wait a minute, your cross. Everybody has a different cross. Now, in religion, they told you that your cross was your burden that you bear.
Yes.
You know, your sickness, your family, your all of the other things, the calamities that we gain, things that we pick up through life. Now, I want to talk about that some tonight, about the crap, the things that we pick up through life. That's not your cross. And so what hit me was my cross. I'm born on February the 19th, so I'm born kind of between the cuff. I'm born between Pisces and Aquarius. And so I got to thinking about that, and all this happened in just within a second or two while I'm preaching in my mind. And so all of a sudden in my mind, I began to say, oh, my cross is not the cardinal cross. We think the cardinal cross, we associate the cardinal cross with that of Jesus. Or then we think of a wooden stake that Jesus was hammered to and there suffered and died. And so that's why religion has well taught us that. But then I began to kind of, after preaching that message and that really hit me, I thought, wow, so I started to following my cross and finding out what my cross was. And I'll get into that a little bit tonight, but I understand that this is relatively new to everybody's thinking. It was relatively new to my thinking. But when I seen it, or when it hit me while I was preaching, it like, whoa, that would change everything. And it does. It's why that everybody's unique. And if you and I do not know the cross that we bear, we don't know ourselves. And the only way we can know ourselves is to know our cross. Yes. And when you start to see that, the more you start to see that, I promise you, it will literally revolutionize your world. It will change your world. And I realize that most people are kind of in the dark in what's happening, what we're saying, because first off, if you've been in Christianity most of your life, and most of you have, or at least a larger part of your adult life, you have been told that astrology is of the devil, or it's something to stay away from, or it's a pseudoscience, or a lot of different names that it's been tagged with, and all those names are generally lies, or they're just not true. And if we would think, and here again, a real hard thing that's for all of us is thinking outside of our box. The normal way we think, outside the box of my normality. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm in this place, and it's hard for me to think outside this place, because this is who I am. This religious ideas, that's me. And so I understand that, and I realize it's difficult for all of us. I just ask all of you to bear with it for a while and chew on it. I would promise you it's going to revolutionize your life. I know it is. And so things that I'm starting to see myself, I'm starting to see many things about myself I don't like, and most of the things about myself I do like. Because all of those, my strengths and my weaknesses are mine. They're not yours, they're mine. Even though you may see my weakness and tell me about my weakness, and my first point of view is, oh, you're the devil, get back, I rebuke you in Jesus' name. I'm not that. But the more I look at it, the more I begin to realize I am that, because that's how God made me. That's how God imprinted me. That was the enneagram. That was, I'm trying to think, brand. That was how I was tagged when I was born. God made me that way. And that's not a mistake. And the more I can see that, then I can make true the words above the door in the temple at Delphi, know thyself. Yes. We know. You do not know yourself until you know your cross. And in your cross, you will begin to know yourself. And when you start to know yourself, you're going to get free. You're going to get empowered. You're going to get excited. Your life's going to change. It's going to become phenomenal, because it's supposed to be that way. And the more we embrace it, the more we look into it, the more excited we'll be. And so, anyway, tonight I'm going to just share a bunch of things about some stuff, kind of to lay out a foundation. Tomorrow we're going to kind of roll our sleeves up and get into some work about your cross. Everybody has their own cross, and we're going to look at it and deal with it in beautiful ways. And so we're just kind of set aside this weekend, first of every month, for the next several months to take this subject and just really tear it apart. So, okay? Okay, I want to read from a book by Professor Holtema. It's called The Great Law, and this book is when I quote from Professor Holtema, I don't recommend you buy his books. A lot of people buy books that because I quote a book or whatever. I read a lot of books I don't agree with. You know, like I read Dr. Walter Martin's book 40 years ago, Kingdom of the Cults. I totally disagree with everything in that book, but I read that book. It was information that I needed to know. You know, many times people would study their enemy so they would know more about the tactics of the enemy. And so a lot of the books I read, I don't necessarily recommend that you buy them or whatever, but anyway, this is something from Professor Holtema, and a lot of things he says I totally agree with. I am right on the page with that man. He was a brilliant man. He died in, what, 72, 74, something like that, and he died, he was about 94, just died mysteriously in his sleep. So, his plan was to live to be 140. That was his goal. And they said even at 94, he had the stamina of a 40-year-old man. So they don't know why. They say there's a lot of mystery around Professor Holtema's death. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we think. But anyway, I want to read you something that he said. Well, actually, it's a page and a half. He quotes from Dr. Herbert Blackschler. I don't know what that is. Yeah, S-C-H-L-E-R, Blackschler. And here's what Dr. Blackschler said, okay? The civilizations of today consider themselves educated and enlightened. Actually, they are to a great extent brainwashed and hypnotized. The world has been plundered for millennials. And I would actually say at least 1,500 years. The world has been, he uses the word plundered. In today's period of so-called freedom, more people are living under physicalized, tranquilized, lobotomized slavery than ever before in history. Wow.
That's a mouthful.
So this, yeah, that is a mouthful. So what is he saying? He's saying that just about everything about you is enslaved. From what? Now listen to what he goes on. This is not Professor, this is Holtema now. It says, the very word education is a tricky misnomer. The schools are not designed to educate, but to domesticate.
Yeah.
Their purpose is to train children like horses and dogs. Children are brainwashed and mind conditioned to do the things and think the thoughts which those in authority want them to do and to think. They are trained to accept without prejudice and to obey without question the dictates of the authority. This training is so deeply instilled that only a few, and that'd be you, only a few are even able to recover from the effects of this training. And they, or in other words, the few, are smeared as enemies of civilization. You think about that. Because if you're here, most people call you an outcast as far as religious ideology. In this controlled civilization of fraud and trickery, we can't teach man the plain facts of creation, the nature of life, and the constitution of the body, and also make him believe that it's scientific to poison patients because they are sick, or that the body can be made disease-proof by injecting poisonous filth into it. These facts are known to the medical art, and the hidden purpose of this poisoning the body is exposed in Dr. Klinger's book. And I have this book. Dr. Klinger was written back in 1936, I believe. 38, something like that. The satanic scheme recently went a little too far, and resulted in the damage of bodies of some women so seriously that they gave birth to a flock of deformed bodies that shocked the public. The drug poison used in this particular instance was a tranquilizer called thalidomide. I don't know what that is. Thalidomide. With the despotic destruction of the marvelous cosmographical science of the ancient masters. That's a mouthful, but I want you to grab that term. Just grab hold of that and just listen to it. The marvelous cosmographical science. Now, I would just say the astrological wheel. It's the same thing, but we'll look into it more. The cosmographical science of the ancient masters, all of the vast Roman Empire and the nations it controlled, plunged into a pit of intellectual darkness that has no parallel in the history of the world. That terrible condition lasted for more than 1,000 years. I would insert at least 1,500 years. I would insert that curse has only been broken in the last couple of hundred years, since science broke free from religion. That's when the Dark Ages began to lighten. That was around the middle 1700s. That terrible condition lasted for more than 1,000 years, right down to the, he says, the 18th century, when a little light began to glow in the gloomy world of darkness. Even that faint gleam is in danger of being obliterated by the nefarious schemers who control civilization and live and thrive on darkness and ignorance. Pause. I would insert, they prefer you to be ignorant. Don't ask questions. That's their idea. Don't ask questions in church. Be still, be quiet, be obedient to the Holy Spirit, because the man who's speaking knows what you need to know. When many times when he's speaking, you have questions and you know that something's not right, but you can't speak out. You know that. When a little light began to glow in the gloomy world of darkness, even that faint gleam is in danger of being obliterated by the nefarious schemers who control civilization and live and thrive on darkness and ignorance. The ancient knowledge that has been permitted to drift down to us relative to creation is the simple fables contained in the Bible. He's calling the stories in the Bible fables. I call the stories in the Bible myths. And I say they are the most phenomenal myths and the most phenomenal fables if you understand them. But if you don't understand them and you look at them as a literal history, you will never know what they mean. You want me to tell you why? Because you'll project the things God wants to do for you, in you, and through you on somebody that lived 2,000 or 3,000 years ago.
That's right.
Not knowing that it was talking to you all the time, because you are the dwelling place that God lives in.
Amen. Amen.
Period. The ancient knowledge that has been permitted to drift down to us relative to creation is a simple fable contained in the Bible. This story was not written to enlighten the mind on that subject, and we form the wrong impression when we mention creation. And we do. I can say the creation story, boom, every one of you, you know what thinks in your mind? You get something from the Seventh-day Adventist storybook about this woman and this man and this snake and this apple tree. And that's your ideology of the story of creation. And I tell you, it's nearly impossible to take that out of your mind. That is a lie. There's nothing about that biblical. It's not even in Scripture. I have asked for years and years, if y'all can find the apple tree in Genesis 2, let me find it. I want to know. And if there's a talking snake there, I'd sure like to see it. Because it ain't there. But you're told that it is there. And people believe that it's there. Even if anybody can stand up with a little bit of knowledge and say, it's not there. They still, oh, you know what he's talking about. It is there. It is not. We think of something as beginnings and coming forth from nothing. The Bible says there is no new thing under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:10. Everything that is has existed. Nothing is created. Eternal existence is the fixed and changeless order of the universe.
Wow.
Put that in your pipe and smoke. That's out of your sane Bible. Ecclesiastes. We call creation, what we call creation is the transmutation of invisible substance to visible matter. That's a very profound scientific statement right there. When invisible vapor becomes visible water, that is a transmutive process, not a creative one. You have to really think, don't you? It's transmuting. It's moving from this to that. It's like when God becomes visible, He does it by you. You become the visible appearance of the invisible God. That is not a creation. That is a manifestation.
How about procured?
I'm sorry?
Procured.
Procured? I'm not sure.
Stages.
Well, you definitely appear in stages. Yeah, you definitely manifest in stages of growth or whatever. That's a transmuting process, not a creative one. This is a regular order of the work of the universe through infinite time to infinite results. But for the sake of clarity, we will continue to use the more common terms create, created, or creation. That's just a little, I'm going to read more out of that. Anyway, let me read you something here. This is a favorite author of mine. It's just a note from Alan Boyd Kuhn. And when I'm using a statement he uses in here about the cosmographic universe, that's one way of saying the wheel of astrology. But if I were talking about the wheel of astrology in ancient Hebrew, I would just say Elohim. But if you had an ear to hear Hebrew, you would say, yeah, but Brother Lynn, Elohim is God. And I would say, no, that's what you were told. That's what religion wanted you to think. Elohim is gods with an S. So Elohim is plural. It refers to the 12 astrological powers, or the 12 spoke wheel of powers, commonly known as the zodiac. That's Elohim. That's the gods. So that's the cosmographic. And the reason that he uses the cosmographic is because it is a zoology in graphic picture by the stars. And you can read that in a lot of different Christian literature. Bullinger, Cease, The Gospel in the Stars. And I have all of these books and have read these books. And I agree with the tremendous amount of truth that's in these books, simply because the story that we call the gospel story is the story of every man and woman that's on the face of the earth, and that story is written in the stars. And it must be, simply because it's emanating itself from the astrological energy, unlimited power, to the visible, physical, manifest world we call the earth, and to ourselves. Because we are the visible representation of that. As Scripture so clearly says. Why don't you know you're the temple of God? Because we don't. We say it, we quote it, but we don't know it. We don't even believe it. We want to get together and get a prayer chain to try to get a hold of God. How can you get a hold of God when God's got a hold of you? I mean, we have so much that's just have to really stop and think. So, this science of the ancient masters that I just read about, to Holtima, here's what one person writes about it. He says, the sun god characters, none of whom can it be said positively that they were living personages, where it must be clearly noted, purely typical figures in a national epic of several nations. They were typical. Let me just read you the names of a few. To indicate the universality of a sun-god myth, it is only necessary to enumerate some 30 of the chief figures known as sun gods amongst the nations of the eastern Mediterranean before the advent of Jesus. Before. They were in Egypt: Osiris, Horus, Serapis, Hermes, Tot, Thoth, Thor, Kusa, Atum, A-T-U-M, Adon, A-D-O-N. In Hebrew, Adonai, the Lord. These are all sun god characters. Anytime in the Old Testament you're reading about these, you're reading about the S-U-N, sun god characters. Adonai, Ayusa, Ayu-Imheptet. In Syria there were Addis, Sabazius, Zagreus, Cable. In Assyria there were Tamez. Babylonia there were Marduk. Actually, if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, maybe some of you have never heard of it, but if you've ever get an opportunity, the Epic of Gilgamesh is the Genesis story retold from the Babylonian concept that predated the Hebrew concept of Genesis. So if you actually would like to know where the Genesis story came from, it came from the Epic of Gilgamesh. And instead of Elohim in that writing, it's called Marduk. And there are a lot of people that know about that, and it's the same identical thing. It's the same story. So when you talk about Marduk, you're talking about Elohim. Same Elohim and Marduk are the same character. Marduk and Sargon. Some of these names maybe some of you are familiar with in ancient myths or different mythologies. In Persia, it was Mithra or Ahura Mazda. That's where the car named Mazda gets its name. And the Zoroastrians, and in Greece it was Orpheus, Bacchus, Dionysus, Achilles, Hercules. Hopefully some of these names are registrants to some of you. Yeah. These characters weren't any different, and if you go back and look at the stories of these characters, it's similar to looking at the story of Jesus. Mm-hmm. Yes. They're all, just like Hercules and his 12 laborers would be the same thing as talking about Jesus and his 12 disciples. Follow the story. Each story was told, we're told the character is doing the same thing.
Same story.
Same story. It's just like King Arthur and his 12 knights. Same story. That again is a myth. That's a story. Yeah. It's a fabulous movie if y'all ever. I mean, there's two of them. There's one with Chive, and that's the best one. And then there's another one with the guy from Australia, the Gladiator. What was his name? Anyway. They're both good movies. So I'm sure you've heard of these different ones. Hercules, Theseus, Perseus, Jason, Prometheus. In India, Vishya, Krishna, Buddha. In Tibet, Bodhisattva, and many others. See, I just named 30 sun god characters predating the story of Jesus, but all saying the similar things as the story of Jesus. These were called sun god characters. They were a part of the mythology. I want you to hear this and clearly hear this. I don't care if you embrace the story of a literal Jesus, embrace that story with your whole heart, but don't just believe it was something that Jesus did. Believe it's something that you are to do. Amen. It's exactly like he said, as I am, you are. What I do, you need to be doing. You've seen me, you've seen the Father. You should be saying the same thing. If you're going to embrace that story, embrace it with your whole heart. Quit trying to say a historical character did it because he was a son of God and you're not.
Yes.
We have got to begin to live this, not just say they did it. So I don't care which character. I'm not trying to lift one character above the other character. I'm trying to get us to see the story because it's the story of me now. I'm the Son of God character. And my name is Lynn Harry Hell or something like that. Wow. Hallelujah. So these Son God characters, none of whom can it be said positively that they were living personages. It must be clearly noted, purely typical figures in the national epics of these several nations. They were symbols, one might say. But of what were they symbolical? That is the point of central importance. That has been the point of central importance for my message for over 20 years. And people misunderstand, and I understand that they misunderstand. Because I misunderstood it so long, I argued and fought and fussed with God. Yeah, but. And until finally God won out. And I say, oh, I can see that. It's so clear. So they're of central importance. Represented characters summing and epitomizing in themselves the spiritual history of human individuality, the individual in his march across the field of evolving life on earth. Do you hear that? It's just exactly like Jesus said, if I would reign with him, I suffer with him. In this life, mainly because of the things you do in ignorance, you suffer the consequences of that and don't know it, don't have a clue why the calamities are happening. They happen to you just like they happen to him. And that's exactly what he's saying. The reason these stories were told is they're trying to teach you and me how to overcome the sufferings, how to overcome the difficulty, how to overcome the traps I get caught into, how to be the overcomer that I am built and designed to be. That's why these stories are told. They should be still the same way the story's being told. Hallelujah. By the individual who is evolving life on this earth. They were the types, they were the models of the divine potentiality pictured as the coming to realization in their careers. They were the mirror held up to man in which could be seen the possibilities locked up in your own nature. God, that just turns me on. I'd like to do like Brother Hagin did one time. Throw the mic down, just run out the tent, just scream and holler. Hallelujah. It's just that good to me. They were the mirrors held up to mankind in which could be seen the possibilities locked up in man's own nature. They were the type figures delineating the divine life that was an ever possible realization in any devoted human being. They were the symbols of an ever-coming deity, a deity that came not once in history in Judea, but that came to ever fuller expressions and liberations in the inner heart of every man and woman on the earth. The solar deities were the gods that ever came and are ever coming. They were described as coming not once upon a time, but continuously and regularly. In other words, every morning when the sun cracks the sky, the Savior is come to you again. Every morning, glory to God. If you realize that and you saw it this morning, you can go to bed and rest and comfort knowing it's going to rise again in the morning, and it's rising for your glory. Man, oh man. Ever-coming deities. The solar deities were the gods that ever came. They were described as coming not once upon a time, but coming every day on a regular basis. Their radiant divinity might be consummated by any earnest person at any time or achieved by that person piecemeal, individually. Lord God,
So who wrote that? Did you just read it?
that's my favorite author,
You did?
Alvin Boyd
Coon.
Coon. Alvin Boyd Coon. Alvin Boyd Coon's book,
Yeah.
which everybody should have, and everybody should read it. I don't have the book. It was written in 1940. Let's see, what was the name of that book? The Lost Light. The Lost Light was written in 1940. It was a major work of Alvin Boyd Coon. It was based off of his doctrinal thesis that he did in 1930.
Is it still available?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Alvin Point.
Alvin Boyd, A-L-V-I-N, Boyd, B-O-Y-D, Coon, K-U-H-N. Yeah, his doctrinal thesis was written on Theosophy. His book called The Lost Light, which this is an excerpt that I'm reading, is from that book. That book is about 600 pages thick, big book. The Lost Light, listen to what it says about this book. His major work, The Lost Light, an exposition of the allegories, parables, and personages of biblical Christianity as having been extant in pre-Christian paganism under different forms and names, was deemed by the chairman of the philosophy department of Ohio University to be the greatest theological work to have ever occurred in the English language.
Wow.
Hallelujah.
Wow. Jeez. Amazing.
And I've said for years, it should be mandatory in any theological school to read that book. But I promise you, they are deathly afraid of that book. Most Christians are. They don't want to read it. They're afraid of it. Because it's not a sit down on Sunday afternoon and read. You got to think. I read you just some excerpts from it. So, you know, and every bit of his work has just totally revolutionized my life. It has transformed my life in the ways that I'm more excited than I've ever been because of the things that continually unfold. That God's continually pulling the scales back from my eyes, and so it's just phenomenal. Anyway, let me see where I'm at on my notes. I want to read something I wrote to you just the other day in my time of meditation. We live in a world that is regulated by timeless principles. One of those major principle just simply being a law, is the law of receiving, or the law of reaping. Now we are familiar with that under what we call the law of sowing and reaping. And so most people under the law of sowing and reaping get the idea, like for instance, that idea revolutionized my life, gosh, some 40-something years ago, when Kenneth Copeland was just a little evangelist traveling, trying to go to full gospel businessmen or just go to any little old church. And he preached Mark chapter 4, the law of sowing and reaping. And it was basically, in the American mindset, it was geared up on money.
Mm-hmm.
Sad, that's basically what it was geared up on.
Yeah.
And it spoke to me that way. At least it got me out of the starting gate from that, because I'm greedy just like everybody else is greedy, and I want to make another dollar. You know, I think everybody else was looking to make another dollar, or a whole lot of other dollars. I'm going to sow 10, God going to give you back 100. That's a pretty good deal. I don't know if any of you heard it that way. That's how I heard it. That's kind of, we call it the law of sowing and reaping. So, it's one of the major timeless principles, or laws of the universe. It's a law of the universe. Everything in the manifest worlds, wherever they might be, works on this principle. So, this major principle, the law of reaping or receiving what you sow, Mark 4, we're going to look at that in just a little bit. In other words, what you receive, and all of us continue to receive on a daily, weekly, yearly schedule. Everybody. You have been receiving every day, every week, and every year. And you will continue to receive as long as you're manifest in this body. You will continue to. Now, if you have the slightest idea you're going to continue to receive, And if you and I begin to grasp the idea that what I am receiving is the results of what I've sown, then I would begin to be cautious, or at least conscious, of what I sow. Right? I mean, think with me, yeah. So all of us continue to receive on a daily, a weekly, or a yearly schedule. Today is a result of a mixture. Everybody say mixture.
Mixture.
It's the result of a mixture of many things. It's not just one thing and or one event. Our whole idea of time, daily, weekly, and yearly, is based on the movement of the earth with its relationship to the timeless universe. In other words, astrology. And so I want to put this on the board, astrology, because a lot of people are afraid of this particular word, astrology. Astrology. And I spell it that way because our sun is a star, right? Yep. Our sun is a star in our universe.
Right.
It's a star among many stars. If you read Bullinger or you read Joseph Seuss or many other Christian astrology writers writing about the astrology, they will tell you about stars that are different magnitude. And our sun, our star or our sun, is a star of a smaller magnitude. There are many, many stars in the galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy, that are much larger. I mean, they'll dwarf our sun many times over. So our sun is not anywhere near the largest star. But you have to read either Bullinger or Seuss and many others. Matter of fact, some of the books I think that you guys will start to read on astrology will begin to tell you the magnitude of certain stars. It'll do them by sizes, asterisk sizes of a star. And you think, well, what's that got to do with the price of eggs in China? About everything. It controls them. Because the sun, if you take the sun from here, you don't have here. You don't. You might be somewhere else, but you don't have here. You won't be here without this sun. At least you won't be here in this dimensional reality. You may be in another dimensional reality with a different sun, S-U-N. But you won't be in this one. So we are receiving because of a mixture of many things that have been sown. Some of those things you sown, you have sown. Some of those things other people have sown in your life. And that started happening when you were just about a day old. You know why? Because you are a cabal. The word cabal is the Hebrew word. You are a receiver of energy. It's not because you chose to be, it's because you're built to be. So what are you doing? Yeah. You are constantly drawing like a magnet. And when a baby is an infant, it is drawing so many things from its environment, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling what a baby, an infant, is drawing on a daily basis from its environment. If it's in a chaotic environment, it's drawing that like crazy. It's pulling that into itself. If it's in a peaceful environment, it's pulling that. It's drawing every day. Now, that's not the baby's fault. The baby is just there. It's just the results of that. So as you begin to grow in your environment, you're picking up from it. You're drawing from it. And that environment is helping to mold you, build you, make you. So if you grow up in China as a Buddhist, you're drawing from that environment. You're Buddhist. If you're growing up in America as a Baptist, you're a Baptist. Even if God ain't, you still are. I've had many Baptist preachers want to fight me, and bless God, because they're Baptists. They don't care what the Bible said. We're Baptists. That's not their fault. That's how we've been trained. That's how we've thought. Our whole whole idea of time, daily, weekly, and yearly, is based on the movement of the earth with its relationship to the timeless universe. In other words, astrology. And this logic, which we get, how many of you have heard of this word right here? Logos.
Yeah.
Logos. Logos is a Greek word. Matter of fact, John 1:1. In the beginning was the what?
Word.
Word. That's right. W-O-R-D. Word. Logos. Genesis 1:1 and John 1:1 have no similarities whatsoever other than English wording. Yeah. In the beginning, God created, Genesis 1:1, Barashit bara Elohim. Then when you go to John 1, in the beginning, the word beginning, arche, actually means first principle. What's the first principle that a child learns? Word. I mean, from the time he's just able to barely breathe, I mean, you're always saying, Mama, Dada, if you're like me, go, Papa, Papa. Say Papa. Say Papa first. Say Papa first. Word. Logos. A lot more to that than we think.
Yeah.
That's how we look at it. That's how we've been taught, because we've been taught to be ignorant. We've been dumbed down. We don't have, most of us don't have the ability to think outside the perimeters we've been trained. And we've got to break that barrier, think out of your perimeters. What else? What if I'm telling you the truth? And you think, oh no, it's a lie. What if it's not? Based on the movement of the sun, the timeless universe called astrology. And logic comes from the suffix, or it is a suffix of the word. You've seen this many times where this word logic is added on to many words. How many of you ever watched The Big Bang Theory? Any of y'all ever watched The Big Bang? That's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, Shelton, they started a new one last year. As a matter of fact, it come back again, I think I was told this year. I haven't seen it. I won't watch it. But I was told that it come back this year, still rated as the #1 sitcom in Little Shelton.
Young Shelton.
Young Sheldon is a baby, or he's a young boy in school, and he goes to the Baptist church where his mama takes him because she's a Baptist. If he's going to be anything, he's going to be a Baptist. So young Sheldon goes there, and he listens to all their stuff. Then he read all the Bible, he read all their stuff, and then he has a consultation with the pastor. He tells the pastor, well, I'm going to start my own religion. And the pastor said, oh, really? What do you call it? He said, I'm going to call mine Mathology. M-A-T-H-O-L. And so the pastor said, well, then why are you here? He said, because I'm looking for converts, and y'all want to join me? And the pastor said, oh, get out of here. Isn't that how it's done? You know, we get like this, we get so content and settled, we don't want to share our truth. Why? Because they're going to say, you're crazy. And you know what? When you were the other way, you were just out there just blundering with everybody.
That's right.
We get like, get a hold of the truth, we just want to keep it to ourselves. No, nobody knows. They think we're crazy. Thinking like this, oh my goodness. So this word is attached to many words. Mathology, Scientology, you just go on and on with that word. And that word just simply means the study of the word of that subject, whatever that subject might be. And so we'll look into that a little bit more. It's just a suffix. You can use it in triology, genealogy, and on and on and on and on and on. So it's just used in that fashion. Now everything emanates from the source, or the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we call that the one. Now, you know, we can attach names to it. We can say the one is God, okay? We can say, and God be #1. And in Hebrew, the very first glyph in the Hebrew alphabet is the Aleph. And the aleph is called the 1. That's its numeric value. Therefore, the aleph, for instance, it is the first glyph in the Hebrew word El, E-L, which means power. It is the first glyph in the Hebrew word Elohim. That means powers. So if I drew the astrological wheel and I put the cardinal cross in that wheel, and then I just put one sign, Aries, one piece of the pie, I could call that one piece L. Why? It's referring to specific power. It's used in the Bible that way. So that many times when you read the word God, it's the Hebrew word El. Most of the time when you read the word God, it's the Hebrew word Elohim. It means all 12 of the powers. Why? Because it's all 12 of the powers that built you in the womb of your mother, and you didn't even know it. And there wasn't a hammer or saw or any sound of anything going on other than God constructing its temple in your mother's womb, which you become the results of. You are God visibly, literally manifest. And so once we can own that, once we begin to contemplate it, once we begin to wrap our arms around it and think about it, say, yeah, there might be a little more to me than I thought. And maybe I am a little more powerful than I thought that I was. So when, or as we begin to do that, we would begin to embrace many of the things that we are instead of many of the things that we're told we are not. Those are the ones we are mostly holding. Those are the things that have been sown into us, maybe purposefully, maybe not purposefully. Maybe your mom and dad called you something and that's stuck inside you and that's not true about you. You know, I hear this a lot. They're brats. I never permitted that around my kids. None of my kids ever was a brat. None of my grandkids ever was a brat. But we do throw little names like that. Those are little seeds sown. Thank God that most of them fall by the wayside or they're either choked by the thorns of life. Isn't that wonderful? Hallelujah. Yeah, y'all didn't get all that, but anyway.
Yes.
You can think about it. But because words are very important. Words have tremendous results. And it's hard for me. I'm saying this to me, it's hard for me sometimes to slow down and choose my words and not say. Have you ever said a whole plethora of words that, dear God, I wish I hadn't said them? Like to draw them back? Yeah, I always pray crop failure on them, God. Let them fall to the ground and be choked to death. Don't let no sun hit them. And sometimes that does happen. I pray. So here we go. That's El, that's God, that's power. And if I put 12 of these up here, that's Elohim, that's the powers. And the powers build you. And I give this, let me show you my birth cross. I talked about the cross. I'm going to show you when my cross was built. Okay? My dad, James and Rachel, on May the 21st, you say, well, how do you know? Well, I'm going to show you how I know. My dad, on May the 21st, he released a seed into the womb of my mom. The egg in my mom took that seed in, and a miracle took place. The miracle that took place was a soul was manifested in the physical dimension in the womb of a woman with the information of the divine in that soul. Because you see, the soul is not the spirit, and the spirit's not the soul, but they work just like Siamese twins. They work as one, but they're not the same thing. Now I'll show you that. So the soul is divine. It is a divine design for dimensional reality. The soul is not designed to be out in space where there's nothing happening. The soul is designed to be in a place where dimensions are taking place.
Say that again. What was Steve said about the soul?
The soul is not designed to be in space. It's designed for dimensional realities. So the soul, the first thing the soul begins to build in the physical body, the structure of the body, is the ego. And the ego is directly connected to the sensual being. But if the ego takes a hold of your sensual being, the soul, out of obedience, will just follow along. Mm-hmm. Yet the soul is empowered not only with knowledge, but it's a gentleman. It never imposes itself. It always waits. God waits forever if it's necessary.
Yes, yes.
But God just waits. And God all the time says, I wish y'all would wake up and be what we are designed. It could be much better. So on May the 21st, my daddy injected the seed into my mom, and that seed was based off of a water base. That's about everything on this earth is based off water. That's the Hebrew mem. The Hebrew mem is this glyph right here. And its value, that's what the mem looks like in Hebrew. And it's called a water word, water. Materiality, mem. And its numeric value is 40. So Daddy injected James William Hayes, injected his seed in Alice Rachel Hayes on May the 21st. And a miracle took place inside my mama's womb. Boom. And that miracle was me. Okay? So, all of a sudden, I began to be built. Then, another miracle took place. Exactly, watch this, exactly 40 weeks later, and on February the 19th, right on the cuff between Aquarius and Pisces, I was born. Exactly 40 weeks. Every time you see this, this is a very used glyph in the Hebrew. The whole story of Moses, his first glyph in his letter, Moshe, is Mem. The whole story of Moses is about materiality. It's about manifest reality in the physical world, and it's based around water. Look at Moses' story. There's water everywhere. There's water everywhere. We just don't really pay attention. We haven't been taught how to pay attention to the story. We pay attention to the story, we realize more about what the story is about. Because the story is more about me than it is about them. And I don't know that. So, 40 weeks later, and all you got to do is take your birthday and a calendar, count back 40 weeks, and it will come up exactly, or you can do it just exactly like I'm showing you. It will come up exactly this way. So whenever Mama pushed me out of the womb, guess what was the first thing that happened to me? The Holy Spirit baptized me, and the Holy Ghost filled me to overflowing, and I went, I breathed. Ruach. That's the breath. That's the Spirit. I had not been filled with the Spirit. I, by the work of the soul and power of the Spirit, had been built. And now that I'm released in this physical dimension as God manifests. And that is my cross. That's the cross that Jesus said for you to take up. And all you have to do is wherever you fit in that wheel, if you will take your birth date, and you don't even have to count back anything. You do just exactly like I did right there. Build your cross straight, and you'll know exactly the day that your father dropped that seed into you. You'll know it exactly. You don't have to ask the question. And if you would like to double check it and count back 40 weeks, you can do that and it'll still come up exactly the same thing. Right on the money. Okay, so that's the story. That's the story of how that the Logos, which is God, becomes physical, visible, manifest. The one, the universe, actually splits itself off, and the one becomes two. And so in the two you have the above, and you have the below. You have the summer, and you have the winter. You have heaven, and you have earth. You have God, and you have mankind, and you can just go infinite. So it splits itself off into the two, but I want you to see this. The two is it's a shadow. It's a what is the word I'm looking for? It's, you know, it looks like it's that, but it's not. What? Mirage? Mirage? What?
Or reflection.
A reflection, yeah. All of those different words. See, it looks like it's two. It looks like it's day, don't it? D-A-Y. Don't it look like it's day, or it looks like it's night, don't it? What's it looking like out there right now? Well, it's just because it looks like it's night. Did the sun go away? Is the sun ain't going nowhere? It's dark. Where'd the sun go? See? I mean, it's just like you said, well, hey, I've had all kind of hell today. You mean there ain't no heaven? No, I got to go somewhere else to get there? No, just wait till in the morning. It'll be here. So, heaven ain't going nowhere. I mean, we have these mirages. We have these things that we think aren't real, and they're real. For instance, God is nothing without you. You're nothing without God.
That's right.
Think about it. God, it takes you to manifest God, and it takes God to manifest you.
Actually, there is no line there. God is all and in all.
That's
Actually, we are God manifest.
That's it.
There is nothing but God.
That's it. The only line that's really here is this line, and this line right here is what we call time. That's the only line that's there. It's time. Because that's all we think. Time has separated me from God. And it hadn't. Because you think God is timeless. And so I want to read you something out of this book. And I don't agree with it, but I do agree with it. That's why I told you. I read a lot of things from different books and different people. And I'm sparked to think. And I think, wow, that's a half-truth. Do you realize half-truths can be very dangerous? The story of Jesus is a half-truth. If you were told the whole truth of that story, you would embrace it with your whole heart.
Because it's you.
Exactly. Because it is you. But when you embrace it with a half-truth, then you know what? It's something He's got you ain't got. It's something you got to go up there and shake His hand. And I want my mansion next to His, or at least down the block, as close as they can get, because they got 2,000 years to, catch up, or whatever. But just on the same street, maybe. Those are the dumbest things that we have ever believed, and people believe them things with their whole heart. And earnest, I'm talking about earnest desire, good, honest, hard-working people, integrous people believe that. And I know that. I'm not upset with them. I'm upset with the lie that we have embraced and called it the truth. And that lie that we have embraced has sown itself in us. And now we are reaping the results of it and don't know it. We're constantly reaping. We're constantly receiving. And sometimes it's not seeds that was sown that we sown. Sometimes it was seeds that was sown inside us. So let me read you this little thing he says right here. To the visible world of matter, so organized or endowed with a double force, active and passive, divided between light and darkness, that's this right here, light and darkness, division, moved by a living and intelligent power governed by Jenny, whoever she is. I reckon that's probably the one you rub its belly. Who presided over its ever different parts, and whose nature and character are more lofty or low in proportion as they possess a greater or lesser proportion of physical matter. To that world descends the soul. Partially agreeing with that, okay? Because it's a mixture in what's being said. But I am agreeing with the fact that the soul did descend. And the way it did, it hitched a ride on my daddy's seed. And it come in that seed, and I can biologically show you that from the breakdown of that seed. Because science has already broken the seed down for me, and I can point out the very characteristic of that seed that is divine, and that is the soul that God released for me. I mean, I think that's pretty awesome. That is mathematical, biological, physically, scientifically correct. So, again, you have to discern these things sometimes and divide between these partial truths and truths. So, to that world descends the soul, the emanation of ethereal fire. That's the part of the seed and the egg, the ethereal fire I can show you. You know why? Because science knows that that part takes 3 parts to make an egg, and it takes 3 parts to make a seed. One of those parts is light. And they know it. It's a photon. You know where that comes from? God is photon. That's light. Descends to the soul, the emanation of the ethereal fire. The soul enters into the dark matter, i.e. the physical substance, wherein the hostile principles, each seconded by its troops of genii, G-E-N-I-I, and ever in conflict, there to submit to one or more organizations in the body, that is its prison. Here's where I agree and I disagree. The soul is as it were a prisoner in you, but there's no door on any lock. The doors are free. But the only way those doors are open is by your beck and call. It's not because God will come bursting through and say, you messed all this up. Let me take over here and I'll drive this thing for a while. You know, it's just like that song, Jesus Take the Wheel.
Yeah.
And that's how we believe. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm embracing. Oh, come Jesus and take my wheel. I can't do it. And that's our whole problem, is we are so deceived, so dumbed down, so telling that we can't do it because we are just a sinner and we don't have the power and we don't have the ability, yet we have within inside us all the power, all the ability that we can ever have.
Amen to that.
And it ain't nobody can do it but we can do it. You know, true, I can be the most anointed person in the world, and I can spray my anointing on you. I can touch you with my anointing. I can do all things. But when I leave, my anointing goes with me. And then you wonder, well, what happened? What happened was you didn't hear the story. You didn't own the story. You didn't put yourself and say, I am Jesus. You weren't bold. You weren't brave. You were afraid. You were terrified. Why? Because you were terrorized.
Right.
By words,
Exactly.
by methods, by concepts, by lies.
Exactly.
And we held on to them. So the soul's not a prisoner in you. The soul is as a prisoner in you. And he is there waiting. It's just exactly the parable of Jesus in the boat. It's the same parable. It's waiting. When Jesus, they woke up and they said, Master, we was afraid. And he said, what? What's wrong with all of y'all? Y'all can do this. You think I got to wake up and speak to the storm? You can do it. Aren't we the same way?
Yes. Amen.
Come do it for me, Jesus.
Yes, we are.
Until it shall be released from its prison. Let's see. It's in the body. submitted to one organization in the body that is a prisoner, listen to it, until it will be at last be released from its prison by death. And oh my goodness, we take 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and every one of you, if you've never read this book, here's a book you should write down, The Devil's Pulpit. That's the name of the book.
Yes.
It was written in 1830 by Thomas Taylor. He got put in jail time and time again, standing up preaching the messages that's in that book over in Great Britain. You should read that book. If you want to read a book that'll wake you up and rattle your world, just read The Devil's Pulpit by Thomas Taylor. I promise you it'll rattle your cage. You may have to read it more than one time. They're to submit to the one or the more organizations in the body that is its prisoner until it will be released from its prison by death, so it may return to its high place or origin or its native habitat, in other words, back to heaven. Lie, lie, lie. Sounds good. Sounds true. I wrote it because I write in my books. It's ridiculous. It's not good to read my books because I mess them up, write over them, and write words on them. This idea is partially true. The soul is submitted to the body, but is there largely awaiting and eagerly awaiting the body to awaken. That's the term or idea behind resurrection. Resurrection's got nothing to do with the physical body coming up out of the grave out of 1 Corinthians 15 when Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
All you got to do is look up the word resurrection in the Greek. It's agero. You know what it means? It means to wake up or stand up as though you had been asleep. The whole story is about that. What is that awakening? It's you awakening to the divine essence of your being.
Yes.
You awakening to who you really are. The whole deal of astrology, the whole deal of you owning your cross, the whole deal behind this idea that Annie and I had to do these meetings is to teach you and me so that we can know ourselves, that we can get to know our divine self, we can own ourselves and be ourselves. The soul is submitted to the body, but is there eagerly awaiting the body's awakening or resurrection in order that the body and soul can be all it is designed to be. In other words, in unison become a super body, or Superman or Superwoman.
God made manifest.
Exactly, and that's another book. If you've never read Dr. Carey's book, God / Man Made Manifest. You ought to buy that book and read that book. He wrote that book in 1922, 4, 6, something right in there. Mid-20s, 1920s. God, Man Made Manifest. Dr. Carey. You have to tell me, Kirby, I'm way over my time, ain't I? Pretty close.
Didn't know you had time.
I don't know. Oh, anyway, let me
An
read
hour
this.
and 8 minutes.
Okay, let me just go ahead and close and just read you this kind of unhook. Got 2 or 3 more pages of notes, and I ain't even off the middle of the first page. That ain't no good. Because I want you to see it, and I'll pick up this in the morning because in the morning we want to get down to the nuts and bolts of you figuring out your cross and trying to figure out some intricacies of that cross, and also figure out your powers, the structure of your powers, etc., etc. And you have all that. And it has to do a lot with the Logos, which is the Word. It has to do especially when you get into Mark 4, the source of the Word. And we're going to get into that in more detail about the Word. Not only the word that you speak, it's the words that are spoken to you. And it's not only the words, it's the soil. If ever we have learned about soil, we know that some things, even though you can care for it and you can do all, put your heart into it, it ain't going to grow if the soil's not prepared, if it's not right. Yeah. And that's a vital part. It's a vital part. So, and another thing about it, the soil is the incubation period of time. You know, how long, do you realize if something incubates too long, it can die in the womb? It can die in the womb just by too long of incubation. Same thing's true whether you put
Yeah.
apple seeds or any other kind of seed. You can, right now, if we were to till that ground up out there right now and plant us a bunch of okras, we won't have some okra come summer. Ain't gonna get no okra. Okra ain't gonna grow in cold weather. It just will not. So there's just so much more that we should know. We should have known this when we were infants, and it wouldn't be so difficult now to try to wrap our brain around it. So we're gonna break it down and see if we can make it just a little bit simpler. Okay, there's some good stuff there. I write in the side of that, the notes, but I'll just quit on this right here, this statement right here. Science could not know that they were the descriptions of the working of one's nature fundamentally, or archaea, or laws, one indeed which sustains the whole order of organic being in its linked interrelationship. It is the law that binds the whole register of manifest life to the throne of God. Each link in the chain, that would probably be that word that you were using. You could call that word you were using a link in a chain. Yeah, probably. I would think. How I would use it. Each link in the chain to the ones below and are above it. It is a law of nature that has remained entirely esoteric in the religion and utterly unknown to science. It is a key to the entire evolutionary enigma, the answer to the great unsolved mind-body problem in psychology and biology, the kernel of all religion. And what is this crucial law? It is the modus by which the living energies on one plane of life are related to those on the planes above it or below it. As Greek philosophy expressed it, the energetic essence of any one plane or kingdom serve as a body to that of the plane above it, but as a soul to that of the plane below it. The higher energies by which is meant those of more rapid vibratory pitch or shorter wavelength use lower forces to give them body and instrumental form. On the other hand, lower forces look to higher ones for their ensouling principle. This involves the necessity of a natural linkage of the energies of two neighboring planes in one organism. I.e., that would be my father's seed, my mother's egg. Boom. Manifest reality. What is this law? What is this law? Incubation of spirit, i.e. God, in the womb of matter, i.e. anything on this earth, anything, is then the law of nature. Everything in ancient philosophy knew that one law. That's why in ancient Egypt, when you go back, it's called natura. Or if you've ever seen Nut, Mother Nut, it's this woman with her feet on the ground and then her legs stretched out over the horizon and then her hands back on the ground over here at sunset and her breast hanging down, feeding and nurturing everything. And that is the picture of Nut or natura. We get our word nature. So does God manifest Himself in nature? Everywhere, all the time. Are you nature? Yes. Yes. And is God manifesting in you? All the time.
Yes.
You may not be in agreement with it, and not necessarily liking it, but I promise you if you'll start to own it, you'll find it's for your greater good. Because it's only there for your good.